Hello, lovely people. Everything seems to be working. No drop frames. Since plugging into the internet, it's been working so much better. Why is my camera all pointing weird? Better? Better-ish? Huh. Something jostled it. Hope everyone's having a lovely Tuesday. It is January the 23rd, 2024. I almost said 23. 23. Today we're going to keep working on... Can I point the correct direction? That way. We're going to keep working on this creature that is part of the Meta Domain, and quite a bit to do. There's the other figure you can see there is Sir Quimp, one of the first models I made. But I think we get a couple of hours of solid work in on this, maybe. We'll see what we can do. I got some coffee here. My cats are behaving themselves, and I'm just going to shut off my email so it doesn't beep at us the whole time. There we go. All right, let's get some stuff done. I was at the Central Florida Comic-Con over the weekend. I was there on Saturday and Sunday. It's a smallish show. It was interesting because it is... Comic-Con used to mean comic book show, and a lot of conventions don't really hold to that anymore. It's much more of a pop culture show, and also kind of a craft show. A lot of people who make things like soaps and just 3D print stuff will be at these events, and it's just table after table of people selling swords and again soaps and buttons and pins and knitted things and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's as a Comic-Con goes, it's not what the old school Comic-Cons were. So it's a good place for people who create stuff, crafty people, to find a place to sell their wares. Hey, Siddharth. So it's a great place for people who are crafty to sell their wares. That makes a lot of... there's just more venues, which is great. But it was weird because... A little weird because there weren't that many comic book people. I mean, I maybe in the entire convention, 20 creators. So really interesting, but there's a lot of voice actors, media guests. Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, was there. And holy cow, is he a workhorse. He had a huge line the entire weekend. And he didn't sit behind the table just signing stuff, and he was around on the other side of the table. And as people came up, he was friendly, and he was on the whole weekend. It was really impressive. Okay, are you being all live? Yeah, I went there loaded with plenty of inoculations. So I'm feeling any weakness I brought with me. I didn't gain any weakness while I was there. But it was a fun convention. I got to meet a few other creators. Robbie Damon of Critical Role was there, but the show is basically there's a main hallway that runs down the convention center. It's not the biggest convention center in the world, maybe on par with something like the Game Hall Con show, but it's nothing compared to like the Charlotte Convention Center or Baltimore Convention Center. So, but it's a big room on both sides. This isn't a convention center. I think this is an arena that has a convention center kind of facility connected to it. So big hallways right down the middle, and then there's a large room to the left and a large room to the right. And I was kind of in the back corner of one of those rooms, myself and a bunch of other creators, comic creators specifically. And along the back wall were voice actors. I didn't recognize them. Generally not my thing. But and then the hall itself was just packed with craftspeople. And there were a few vendors of old comic books and things like that, but by and large it was not that. So, but Robbie Damon was in the other hall. I would love to have had my Dungeons and Dragons stuff within line of sight of his booth, so while people were waiting they would see the glowing D12 and maybe some of the minis and figures I had on my table. One thing I can show you is this sculpt, which I sculpted here on the channel and 3D printed in pieces so I could even print the darn thing. But here's the Grognard in all his glory. I had this on my table, basically behind the books. So you would see a bunch of D&D, my TTRPG products, and then minis and things like that. And then I brought some of this stuff. So this is really simple. It's painted black and then has that kind of zenithal highlight, spraying down on top of it to accentuate it. Three times the size of the original, so it's to scale with, like, if this mini were a standard size mini, you can see this to scale. So not bad. It was I think it made a nice presentation. I also printed. I modified a 3D print I got from Printables to make a shelf for behind me, and so I printed that yesterday. So this shelf ran out of filament at some points. That's why it's two-tone. But I'll paint the whole thing black, and it will be on the wall behind me, and so will that figure. So this is large enough to support that figure. Yeah, so it's pretty good to be able to modify things. I wasn't able to open. It was a 3MF file. Is that the standard? Is that one of the standards? And you download the files in that format, but you can't open those files in things like Shaper 3D, or even in Nomad Sculpt. I had to use my slicer program to convert this to an STL file, bring it in, and then it changed the size of it and just so it was larger and stronger. And hopefully it won't collapse. But that's the risk you get to watch. As you watch this stream, things might fall off the wall behind me at any moment. What else is exploding right here? What? Okay, some spammer. That's great. Delete. I feel that you're having way better luck with 3D printing than I did. The 3D printers have gotten better, David. That's part of it too. But some stuff like this well, not tremendous luck with this guy. The first few prints of him were terrible failures. I had to glue him together. Currently, the base of this figure and the foot is a single print, and then the upper body of the figure is basically cut in half at the waist. So you've got the legs printing separately, then you've got the upper body printing separately, the hand and the axe printing separately, and then these top two teetering books are printed separately and held in place. The cape, you can see the line. Because it's going to be on the shelf behind me, I didn't care about that. But I could go in there and fix that with putty if it was something that was going to be on a turntable or something like that. But since it's just going to be behind me and lit by the lights, I'm not expecting to paint this thing. Okay, that's fair. It is like having luck on the reroll, because it can still clearly mess up, but I definitely get to. I feel lucky. Patience, practice, and doing the work. That has a lot to do with it, I think. I also, yeah, I mean, I picked the right printer, I think. The resolution, lack of lamination, ridges, lines is outstanding. It's quite impressive. It's quite impressive. And this isn't the fine nozzle. There is a 0.4. The default nozzle is 0.4 millimeters. And I purchased one that's half that size. That could do even thinner layer lines. That friend of Caves from Fat Dragon Games has been playing around with the 0.2 nozzle, and the results are astounding. I mean, they're not the level of a resin printer, but but I'm also not wearing gloves and a hazmat suit. I'm not dressing like Dr. Horrible just to make a 3D print. Although I suspect their success rate might be better. But some of these prints have been really great. What I have to do is cobble together a high-resolution, large-size version of Sir Quimp to have at conventions. And I'm also designing a new convention display that hopefully most of it will be modular and 3D printed. I'd like my table display at the conventions to kind of look like... It's tough because I'm using those wooden planks, those kind of plywood supports, which are too good, and they add. They're so nice. The color of them is so nice. The finish of them is so nice that it elevates the books that are placed on them. I don't want to lose that, but I like the idea of the rest of the table almost feeling a bit like a miniature, like a tabletop D&D display, like the place where you have an adventure, something that says immediately this is D&D. This is fantasy. It fits the comics I'm doing. It fits the Middle Age. And I think it just would be cool. And a couple of extra little lights here and there to highlight things. Of course, orange on one side, blue on the other, like all my paintings. David says, I was gifted a printer by a fan, very generous. That's wonderful. And I only did a few prints because it was more frustrating than rewarding. I get that. I had a printer from the company XYZ, a Da Vinci, and I tried printing some stuff, and it was a lot of spending a lot of time leveling the bed. The platform that the stuff is extruded onto is the bed, and if that's askew in any way, or lumpy, or has any kind of irregularity one way or the other, as it's piling up all this molten filament, things will slide and things will break. Most of the new printers, most modern printers have auto bed leveling. Bamboo makes a A1 Mini, which is a bed slinger. It's the printer I have. The bed stays still, and the nozzle moves XY coordinates. And the z-axis is the platform. So the platform moves up, it creates this, and the platform slowly moves down, or meets it halfway. But anyway, so it's pretty impressive. But the very first thing it does is it spends like 5 minutes tapping the surface of the platform to make sure it's level. And if there's a failure or something like that, like let's say it starts detecting spaghetti, it will pause the print and then send me a text message. It will alert me on my iPhone saying, hey, you've got spaghetti detected, what do you want to do? Sometimes if it's a minor problem, or if it's misinterpreting what it is, and that's happened. There's one print I was making, it happened twice. There just happened to be a part where a bit of loose filament would come off at a certain point in the process and be in a way where the machine could detect it, and it was like, no, it's fine, keep going. But by and large, it saves you a lot of filament. The downside of it is, which is really worth noting, is that if it pauses the print, it still keeps the bed temperature very high. So if it's it has to heat up the platform that it's on. So the bed has got to be at a certain temperature, so the plastic will melt and stick to it. It maintains that temperature even if you are, if the bed were to cool off, the print would come loose. So, you know, if the print fails, or if the printer has a question overnight, it will just stay on, the fan will stay on, the whole bed will remain hot. The whole thing just keeps cooking overnight. So it's a lot of waste. That would be wasted energy. Now, they say these machines are fairly energy efficient. I haven't noticed any kind of increase in my power bill. But still, that seems wasteful. And I don't really want to print pirated 3D files. Oh, but there are so many... And there are so many free printable files. I mean, printables.com and Thingiverse. Most of those are free. They're just limited in terms of how you distribute them. A lot of people just don't want you selling them. And at the convention I was at, there were tables full of 3D printed objects, and I don't know if those folks had the rights to sell those things. But it's, you know, Artist Alley. Copyright is copyright's a quaint, old-fashioned notion. I think we need to do a cast recording of the Middle Age and have that looping on an iPad on your table with the volume turned down, so it's just a page slideshow. But, where was we? My iPad says it's 9:41. Every once in a while, my iPad, when I'm restarting it, I'm not sure if it's only when I'm connected with the computer here, it says it's 9:41 in January. You can 3D print a frame for your iPad. Someone did have the same 3D printer I have at the convention, and they were printing something. I couldn't tell what it was, but I wish I was just in near some of the other D&D stuff, because the D&D stuff, by the way, sold compared to my comics, sold 2 to 1. I think because it's a pop culture show. because it's a pop culture show, the number of people who are there at a Comic-Con for comics, who read comics, is a shrinking percentage. And so now once you've got that subset of people who read comics, then you have to have people who are reading comics and like my style, right? So, you know, some people are there for Golden Age comics, some people are there for Silver Age comics, modern comics, European comics, they might like comic strips. And, you know, you've got my thing, which is this kind of orphan style that doesn't quite fit into those others. And so the idea of, I mean, if people, a lot of people come over and think it's a kid's comic. It's not that it's not, but at first blush, basically you have to be cool with it. You have to be okay with my style. And so that's a subset of a shrinking percentage. But in terms of D&D, my art style, my approach for the D&D content, the TTRPG content, I'm definitely meeting those fans where they live. And so of the people who play RPGs, and the vast majority of them play Dungeons and Dragons, my style is kind of is playing on their turf, and I think that makes that a easier sell to folks. Hey, NPC. I think we need to hook all the D&D players who are buying your game work on your comic set in the same world as your supplements. And I do, everyone who backs my Kickstarters for my games get a PDF of Volume 1 of The Middle Age. That was the thing the only reason that was the main reason to ever do the first Intoximancy book. Was to, just to send out the PDFs so get more people to read The Middle Age. So I still do that. Every person who backs my Kickstarters gets a copy of The Middle Age. David, I appreciate that. I think, and I think it will. I think it will. I think as the sense of, also that's another key part of this is that the next Kickstarter I'm doing, which you can check out, nibblemancy.com, already 70 people have signed up for it. It'll launch in February. Nibblemancy is the magic used by the king in the story. So again, much like Intoximancy, which is like, hey, if you like this stuff, check it out. You know, check out where it started in the Middle Age. Similarly, Nibblemancy has a more direct connection, whereas there isn't a Meta Domain Cleric in the Middle Age, and there isn't a death-dealing rogue yet in the Middle Age. When you say that, agreed, and it did work at the convention to some degree. I have a $10 starter book. Basically, the hardcovers are $25, which prices it outside some people's wheelhouse. I also got the sense that this convention is in a part of Florida without deep pockets. I'm spoiled by a lot of these other conventions. Heroes Con, people come there with lots of money to spend on art. Baltimore, SPX, everything in the Washington, D.C. area is fairly insulated from the economy. Because all that government money tends to be recession-proof. And the sales there are great. But sometimes I'm at a show that's in kind of an area that doesn't necessarily have that resilience, and you feel that it's there were no commissions. This was not a show where I was going to ever sell, even selling it for $50. No one was going to buy a beautiful commission. They just don't have $50. And they like your style, they like your writing, they like your work, and here's the comic. Yeah, absolutely. I still think you need to introduce a party of the cover characters from each supplement wander across. That's absolutely true. Yeah, David, maybe that's a thing. In speaking of the Middle Age, the episode 299 was released last week. My Patreon has been much more bustling this year, spending a lot more time updating it. I was concerned that I was updating it too much, but the response so far has been quite nice. But there was a new episode of the Middle Age, 299, and I posted it last week, and this week I held off on it. I want the updates on WEBTOONs, Tapas, and GoComics to be on Mondays. So anyone who wants to support it over on my website, wants to read it earlier, can check it out on my website or Patreon, but they'll be on the other sites. And episode 300 is next. I don't think episode 300 is like there's going to be this big momentous moment. Momentous moment? Are all moments momentous? It's not going to be this big deal. I think it's just an interesting number because the story is kind of there's like 45 more pages of where this story is going before it wraps up, where this arc wraps up, and so I don't know, we're kind of the 2/3 point. But the response has been amazing over there, and we just passed 18,000 subscribers on WEBTOONs. But WEBTOONs had a really interesting problem this week. It was something I noted when I did my video on how to, tips for how to get your audience numbers up and subscriber numbers up over on WEBTOONs, was that when you post anything new to WEBTOONs, it automatically goes into the genre category and the all category of Canvas. So WEBTOONs has got two pieces. It's got the commercial side, which are the originals. So like original series. This is something that was made for their network. And then there is the Canvas section, which is kind of the YouTube, anybody can upload whatever they want section. You have to basically click 2 or 3 links deep to get to the Canvas section. To get to the part where you can see everybody else. It's sort of like the homepage of the site. You click on Canvas, then you have their curated selection, and then you have to click on all or genre or something like that, or a specific genre to get to that subsection. So a few clicks deep, you're not really, it's great that you can be a few clicks in, but then whatever the most recent comic is that's posted, that's tagged in those 2 genres or the homepage, immediately appears in the first location. So if you upload your comic to one of those sections, it will appear, at least for a little while, on the front page of those genre sections and the all section, but the all section moves so quickly because so many things get uploaded. Spammers, like OnlyFans type things and bots and all sorts of scandalous material. I'm trying to parse the descriptors here. They were like, oh, anybody can post? And so they just started posting not, I would, borderline not safe for work content to WEBTOONs. And flooded the site, flooded the Canvas section. So there was a few screen captures over on Twitter, and it was some of it was just the exact same image again and again and again. Someone named a new comic, uploaded it, they gave it a random number, string of numbers as the name of the thing, uploaded the picture, and pasted in the broken English instructions on how to go visit more for whatever that it was that they were selling. And it kind of messed up Canvas badly for a couple of days there. Siddharth says from YouTube, used to upload the Middle Ages very frequently, but I've slowed down the past year. I know after a certain point your comic has already gotten a following, you don't need to do frequent uploads. But was this on purpose? No, it was not on purpose. It was not. There wasn't a plan behind not updating the Middle Age as often. It was more like my own life got in the way of me doing that. There was stuff going on which made doing a funny adventure romantic comedy not where my head was at or heart was at. And so I don't know, maybe there were 10 updates last year at best. So no, it wasn't a plan. It was more like life. But I didn't want to give it up because it wasn't a thing where I'm like, I'm not ending this comic. This is the best work I've ever done. It was the first time I felt like I thought I have my voice, that it's a style that I like, that makes me happy. I'm not sure if a handful of people get it, but that's fine. As long as it makes me happy, because that's the thing. If it makes you happy, then who cares about the money part? I mean, the money part's nice for rent and all that, but I had done a lot of projects. The opposite of that is doing the thing where you're chasing a market. Someone, oh, what's popular now? Shiny vampires. I'll start working on my book right now and hope that it's still a trend by the time it comes out. If you're chasing a trend or trying to draw on the style of somebody else, if it's fun to do those things, yeah, knock yourself out. Like, man, I've always wanted to do a story about werewolf westerns, and that happens to be the trending thing at the time. Then yeah, knock yourself out. But if it's a thing where it's purely about the money, I don't get it. I don't get it. And the Middle Age really was my last ditch kind of thing. Like, if this doesn't hit, you know, I'll keep doing them just for me. And I'll just do them for me anyway. But I did the first one, and some very nice Patreon supporters came in. Some fans of my... Fans is a strong word. Some readers of my previous work supported me on Patreon. And that was a shot in the arm. But then it was getting an Eisner nomination. You know, the comic was about 6 months old, 7 months old, and it got an Eisner nomination for Best Webcomic. And that changed my... That gave me, I don't know, more confidence to continue. But it was created with a backup plan. Hurricane flood, hurricane. Yeah, David, that stuff didn't help. Having no power, having my home flooded a couple times. There were a lot of things that were and in some ways those were the least tumultuous things I had to deal with. People were like, I was in a car accident, not a car accident, my car was hit. And I'm talking about it on the stream, and I'm kind of laughing. And because I was hit by the nicest old lady you could... Like I said at the time, I couldn't have been hit by a nicer person. And people thought that it was like, there's a glass half full and optimism thing. I think it's a thing where, you know, if... in the context of what can go wrong, it doesn't... You know, people have it so infinitely worse. And other things in my life were just so brutal that those things seemed light by comparison. That context helps. But it was a thing where it's also like, what am I gonna... So like during the Intoximancy Kickstarter, which was at the end of 2022, stuff was going so sideways. And I was working on this thing, and here I do this thing, and it takes off. It's this wonderful thing, and it's like, okay, that's where I throw myself. So sometimes it is a safe haven from the craziness. People throw themselves into their work, that sort of thing. But there are some things I just can't get my head around, like writing the next arc of this story was just impossible for me to do. So no, it wasn't intentional. There is something that you gain by being by gaining a reputation and having, you know, I put in 6 years of comics. I put 6 years of comics out for free. That buys you some leeway with the audience. I don't think you should take advantage of it. I don't think it's something you should take advantage of or take for granted. But I do think it's something where, if you're doing something personal and you're being upfront and you're being clear with people and still being communicative, that they will understand. You know. But if I were a corporation or a big company and I had the same kind of delays, people wouldn't accept it. But I think because it's me, and they know it's just me, and they know that, you know, life throws you curveballs, they tend to be accepting. Anywho. But the good news was when I came back to working on the Middle Age, it felt so good. I so missed it. Part of it is that sometimes a project can languish, and then you've changed. You're not in the same headspace. You're not the same person you were when it began. That's almost always the case in a long-term thing. I've made that joke from the beginning that doing a comic strip or a story over X number of years, the idea that Jeff Smith was the same person at the beginning of Bone as he was at the end, it just can't be true. It's like a generation ship. You're taking off, and at some point, a different captain will be landing this thing. You take some of the larger projects, the Dave Sim and Cerebus. It was not the same guy who crashed that ship at the end. Cave says, really, we all support your Kickstarters and we couldn't watch your site. And by the way, I'm so happy with how the Meta Domain book is coming along. One of the things that each one of these books have had so far is kind of is an intro page. Before we get into the rules and what happens at each level and your perks and the spells and the magic, there is an introductory page, so far always from a fellow practitioner, either a death-dealing rogue in the Death-Dealing Rogues book, or a fellow intoximancer, Archmage Angus MacGuffin. And in this one, it's a bishop, brother. It's Brother Anderson W.W. Nadir, who writes you this cautionary welcome to the meta domain, urging you to consider the life domain as a simpler, safer choice. But if you stubbornly decide to go forward with the meta domain, he basically lays it out for you. That it's a thing. It's a whole thing. And I'm really enjoying that. I think it sets the tone nicely. I have much to do. I mentioned through Kickstarter that I'm now at the point where it's clear that what I've been doing with Intoximancy has been inspiring some other folks. The stuff I've been doing, my subclass books, are inspiring other people to do something similar. I think before Intoximancy, it would have been an absurd notion to do a whole book about a subclass. What? Just this? No, you're supposed to do 10 subclasses, and you're supposed to do this whole thing, and you're supposed to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. This is, what do I know? I'm going to do a single subclass. And the reaction has been really good. But now there are people who are also doing the same thing. And it's really interesting because their Kickstarters look like kind of a copy and paste of mine. Not in terms of content, but in terms of structure. A little bit with the content, but a lot. But like they'll use the same kind of turns of phrase. I haven't seen anyone take a spin on do a spin of the little catchphrase of fun, powerful, and playable. I keep hammering those home because those are kind of my 3 tenets of these projects. I haven't seen anyone use that same turn of phrase, but the graphics and the bullet points and the way everything is structured and organized, oof, it is I don't know. It's very flattering. And I gave them a shout out in my last update because I'm like, this is a person who supported every one of my Kickstarters. They're not using AI. They are and they're doing their own thing. They're not aping what I'm doing. They are, but I think it's a thing where that project to me feels a bit like what we were talking about. Steve's having financial success with this. Let's do something like that because we would like financial success. But it doesn't feel disingenuous to me. It feels like they're clearly lifelong gamers. They clearly have this idea. They're doing something very different. They're just sort of packaging it like mine, and doing something different in terms of I got a delivery of them because I backed theirs. And they delivered it immediately. I don't even know if they waited to see if the payments were processed. But they're doing something very differently. They're kind of doing a level by level multi-classing character, and they're saying, okay, you're doing this at this level, this at this level, this at this level, this at this level. It's very much a guided thing, which is curious and different and not what I would do. I would prefer to give people leeway. That said, with Nibblemancy, one of the fun things about that is there is a section where you get recipes as a baking and cooking wizard. And there are certain recipes that you only get, there's one per the other classes. So if you are a Nibblemancer and you are a fighter and you take at least one level in fighter, you will get a recipe that is specific for that. There's a specific fighter recipe. Similarly, if any one of those other classes, not artificer, that one's not part of the SRD. Any of the other ones, but I'm going to create a generic other one. If you're a class that's not one of these, you get this one, and that should cover artificers. The dungeon dudes in their book have a class of their own. It's like an alchemist type. I forget the title of it. Maybe it is alchemist. And Nibblemancy is also going to have something cool in it. It's going to have a few more spells that are specifically... Every one of the Nibblemancy recipes are going to be appropriate for Intoximancers. And there are a few Intoximancy-inspired spells as well. So stuff that should have probably been in Intoximancy if I had thought of it, and they're in this book. So I'm hoping that everyone who backed Intoximancy, and if they liked it, will be on board for this. Siddharth asks, which is more fun for you to draw or sculpt, men or women? Men. I'm very self-conscious with sculpting on stream women, because you're sculpting. You basically start with a near naked figure, and I think that just is like that's going to attract an audience I'm not necessarily going for. So it's a pure hang up on my part. And growing up drawing comic books, American comic books, it was largely male heroes. And so I just got more comfortable. I was drawing more of that. So that was sort of in terms of the 10,000 hours of experience, I have just more experience in that way. And so with more experience also comes the comfort. Although I could draw, Phosphine or any of the characters with a more of a feminine gendered appearance. Again, dragons in the story are neither male nor female, but they often appear classically feminine or stereotypically feminine. And also part of it was the play on the word, like when in there's a couple of jokes in the comic. It's just they're always kind of throwaway jokes, kind of extras. It's the joke of the comic strip itself. I don't think ever hinges on this concept that when you look at Tolkien, it's elves and dwarves and men, and the idea that man is synonymous in fantasy with humanity, say with mankind, things like that, that there's room there to play. And so the notion that humanity in that setting, using even modern parlance of using man as the descriptor, leaves room for, well, if whatever's not man would be, at least in our parlance, feminine. So in terms of another culture trying to speak our language, and the word for not man, it gets weird, and trying to play with language in that way but also not lose the reader is kind of a tightrope. Still would be banned in Florida, though. Absolutely. I don't care. I don't care. So one of the a classic comic convention bit of equipment nowadays is a retractable sign. I highly recommend one. It's basically this kind of window shade affair, which is a mechanism about 2 feet, usually 3 feet wide. You're gonna get smaller ones. I have 2 feet wide ones, so they fit on carry-on bags or check bags for luggage in airports, things like that. They're 2 foot wide window shade, and you pull the window shade up. It goes 6-7 feet tall, and there is a collapsible pole inside the alongside the contraption, and you straighten that pole up. It's reinforced. It's all gonna stay nice and sturdy. You plug that into the base, and you hang the top of the once expanded sign up, and the tension of the window shade mechanism keeps this the sign held up. But there's a lot of pull on it, and so I got there. It's a convention on Saturday. I have to be up at like 5:30 in the morning. It's a 2-hour drive. They probably would have put me up the night before, but I like sleeping in my own bed. Get up at 5:30, pack the car. I'm on the road by 7. I drive for 2 hours. Get to find a place to park, load my junk in, get my car where it needs to go, start putting my stuff on my table, seeing people and trying not to get too distracted. Get my table mostly set up. I haven't put the banners up yet. I put the banner back up, and I can tell it's not going to work. And it comes loose and just slaps down. And if you've been to a convention, you're sitting up in an artist alley or anything like that, you've heard that sound, and it's like a gunshot. And it scares the hell out of me. And also clipped my hands. It shattered the nail here, so I'm in pain. and skinned this knuckle, and so my day's starting and I'm miserable. Fortunately, because of the minis I've been making, I had super glue with me in case anything broke off. I thought whatever broke off would have been a model and not part of me, but here we are. And so I was able to super glue my like a nail polish, super glue nail polish to keep my, and I'm like, so if you came by my table this weekend, I wasn't flipping you off. I was just keeping my finger from slamming into anything. More than ever, David. More than ever. But I was trying. People want to come up and they want to shake your hand, and I'm like, nothing. What was really cool though at this convention, that has nothing to do with the injury. And I didn't yelp in pain, and I didn't stop working, even though, I basically bandaged myself up. It kept going. But people were coming up, and the gamers had heard of Intoximancy. So somehow they had heard of it. I don't know what's happening. I don't know how they know about it. It wasn't. I was there as a comics guest, not as a gaming guest. So it wasn't like I was promoted in any way as creator of Intoximancy that I'm aware of. And they came up and they were, it was a hit. Again, it was a small show. I don't think I could extrapolate what happened at that event to a broader context, but for that small sampling, it was really good. Again, a lot of the musculature here doesn't matter all that much because we'll be covering it with fabric. I just find this helps me to understand the figure and get the pose right if I can jot in some of this stuff. I don't suspect I'll be bringing any of the minis to comic conventions anymore. The ones I brought them to, I don't think... What I like about the minis is they're very lightweight, but they take up some space. The little kits are in little boxes, and so they take up space. Though they weigh very little, they also take up a lot of space on the table for display purposes. I like having the individual minis on the table because it says, at a glance, if you're in the know, you see that and you think wargaming or role-playing games. So it's very helpful in that regard. So maybe I have a handful of them and keep them behind the table. But because I'm driving to a convention, I'm not sure if that's how you feel, David, but I thought, you know, I overpacked. You know, if I'm driving to an event, I bring too much stuff. So, I can't help myself because the thinking is always, well, what if I get a run? What if a bunch of people come in and that's specifically what they're after? You know, I'm not familiar necessarily with the audience there, so I don't know what they're going to be into. I'd done this show before, but mostly it was pre-COVID. And so I don't know if it's the same audience. Because it's a show that has media guests, that often can change the demographics of the room a lot. I think if there were if there was a cartoonist of note, let's say a Walter Simonson, a David Peterson, if you will, if a cartoonist of note is set up there, then I'm going to sell more comics. Because people who are going to go and make a pilgrimage to see Walter Simonson are also interested in other comics, and they've already got, you know, they get whatever they wanted from Walter, and they're like, what else is here? And they might check out my work. Assuming the work is in any way related tangentially, or you can imagine that one person who likes this would also like that. Like the way movie trailers work. People, you know, you're better off advertising an adventure movie in front of Avengers than you would be if you were going to do a period drama. I rarely drive to cons anymore, says David. Did I 3D print a replacement nail? I should have. C2E2 was my big con that I would drive to, and yeah, I brought the works. Right? Central Florida Comic-Con and the South Carolina Comic-Con. It's about 6 hours away. I overpack. I bring too much stuff. And that show will be interesting because I think they said William Shatner will be a guest. And so I'll be breaking out all my old Star Trek stuff. I drew the Star Trek comic for IDW for a couple of, I don't know, 3-4 issues? But when IDW was trying to get the license for Star Trek, they, Chris Ryle, who was their top guy, he reached out to me to be the artist on the series, and said, you know, if it happens, maybe I could be the artist on the series. So anyway, I created a pitch document for IDW for Paramount for Star Trek, and so I had to draw the characters. I had to draw Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, and William Shatner as Captain Kirk, and we had to get approval from William Shatner's people and Leonard Nimoy's people. So I am a Shatner approved artist and a Leonard Nimoy approved artist. And then they got the license, and then they got a way better artist. And that way better artist was brought on to do the project. And with 6 or 7 weeks before it was going to go to press, that artist had to leave the project, had to bail for some reason, one reason or another. And so they reached out back to me and another artist. And because the deadline was now so tight, we split it up. So I did every odd number issue and he did every even number issue, which in Star Trek terms, the odd numbers are never the good ones. But so I created that pitch document for that. And so I still have some of that. I still have quite a bit of artwork from that. I got some collections of the books. I'll bring those to sell. Ryle is great. Yeah, right? Oh, what was the reason? I didn't want to hurt myself carting around boxes. And I never like leaving product in the car in the parking lot. I get that too. I've done that in the past and I've worried. But a sealed box of a volume. I did have someone break into a car when I was at Baltimore Comic-Con one year, many years ago. I just got a call from the hotel, asking about, is your car this? And I'm like, yeah, it's been broken into. So, so they took some stuff. Not great. But I think they weren't looking for comics. I think if you're outside a comic, I think when you're in downtown, in a city downtown, people are less likely looking for paper. Or they were just disappointed that it was my car. They were really hoping for Walter Simonson's. I mean, it has a window, door seal. Oh, yeah. Oh, it was awful. It was a real pain in the butt. So, folks who don't know, my name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age. Episode 299 just went live on WEBTOONs, Tapas, and GoComics yesterday. I also make Dungeons and Dragons source books. I can call them that. They're compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. They're not official Dungeons and Dragons. These are kind of homebrew, but they're part of that community of creators who make material that's compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. My first one, Intoximancy, got nominated for an Emmy Award, which I remain stunned by. And part of it is definitely like I feel like I got it the year I could. I only got it the year I could get it. Any other year, I think this year is going to be amazing. The nominees, because there was so many good books put out last year, and then this year Meta Domain will come out. Nibblemancy will come out. The one I have planned after that will come out. And this is also the same year that the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons is going to come out. Tales of the Valiant will come out. Matt Colville's book will likely come out. So many things will come out this year. I think the new the Dungeon Dudes book will come out. There are so many great projects and highly anticipated projects coming out this year that I don't think I would have any oxygen. There would be no... I don't think there's any spotlight left. So I'm still going to go for it. I'll still submit my work. For the same reason I always submit stuff. I want 6 more readers. Caves, the Flavor Text Adventures, I believe is going to come out. I haven't seen the solicitation yet, but fingers crossed. Word is it's going to have some amazing guest artwork. Legendary guest artwork. But I will not spoil Caves. His embargoed press releases and such. But I've been very happy with the response over on WEBTOONs for the new episode of The Middle Age. Like you were saying, Siddharth, that it had been a while. It had been quite a while since the last update, and that at one point, I think it was in 2019, there were 2 episodes a week. And then that fell apart. There just was no way for me to keep that up. I do a lot of freelance work. The Middle Age brings in income, but it's never been my full-time gig. I do a lot of web design work. I do a lot of comics work for educational companies, and that can intrude. And only because I need it to pay the bills. It basically, that work funds the Middle Age. And when the Middle Age started, it was on the heels of another big comics project, and that allowed me to spend my time working on the Middle Age, and even get that thing off the ground. So that still happens from time to time. We're a big cartooning project, one which eats up all my hours and all my creativity to the point where my hand is hurting. I'm like, I'm not going to sit down and do any more drawing. They're fun projects. I wish people would ever see them. But yeah, they pay the bills. What's really interesting, a lot of talk lately has been from the comics community. I think it was Jimmy Palmiotti on the Twitter saying that just tons of people have been reaching out to him about crowdfunding. I think as the various creative spaces are tightening their belts or just letting people go, folks are looking for other ways to survive and hopefully be creative. And so it's going to send a lot of people in the direction of crowdfunding. Marcus, nice to see you. That's really messed up. I gotta fix that. Oops. That's not right. I'm gonna use clay to fix this. So I've been trying to find a way to go see that Godzilla -1. There's a theater, I think about an hour away, I can go see. It was at a local theater, but there just was no way to make it. It was closer to the holidays, and there was no way for me to break away to go see it. So the Meta Domain work is going great. I'm excited to share that with everybody. I'll be sharing previews of the subclass this week over on Discord and on WEBTOONs. And it's really interesting is I'm setting up the pre-order shop not on BackerKit but on my own website. So if you want to pre-order the PDF, you can. You want to pre-order the I've never done this before. If you want to pre-order the zine or the hardcover, you can do that on my own website. I'll be adding the mini, the Grognard, and the Meta Domain minis there as well. I'm still using BackerKit. I'm going to be using BackerKit for everyone who backed the campaign. The 477 people who backed the campaign. They'll get an email saying, fill out all your information, tell me where to ship your stuff, and all that. And you'll have the opportunity to add things if you haven't already, like the Grognard mini. That was interesting because it was an unlocked stretch goal. So reduce the strength of that a little bit. So if you backed the campaign and wanted to get that, you'd be able to. I'm ordering extras of the Grognard. I think I might be more excited about it than anybody else. I'm just so happy with how the thing turned out. This is the actual size. You can see that I used a different colored filament for the hand and the axe. But I think it turned out great. I think people will want this mini even if they don't know what the character is. Sidal says, it's great that you're able to make solid money from your comic. Do you think if you hid your comic behind a paywall, it would do better in terms of making money? No, I do not. I'm opposed to that for a couple of reasons. I think it might, depending on who you are. If you're Brad Geiger and you're doing stuff that's not safe for work, you know, the paywall is almost like a necessity. And but then he does the safe for work versions as well. He does a lot of he basically does a lot of free safe for work stuff, and then has other stuff and not safe for work stuff and exclusive material over on his Patreon. That's kind of a good way to go. If you can have a free version of all your content and then this kind of amped up other version hidden behind a paywall, you add a little bit of titillation to it, and you're definitely going to make some money. But I'm a big fan of making it free. I want people who don't have money to be able to read my stuff, and there's an argument like why pay for something if you can get it for free? I totally get that. But I'm not going to let that argument get in the way of people who don't have money reading my work. Peanuts was given away for free. Calvin and Hobbes is given away for free. I'm not doing it out of some sort of tradition. I'm doing it because I feel like I want people to read my work, and if they've got money, I want as many readers as possible, because a subset of those readers will become fans. Some of those readers will become super fans, and a percentage of those will become supporters. And I think that's a good system. So I'll keep putting it out there. And I think if fans really like the work, if readers really want to support this story and help me keep making it, they'll support me. And if they're not in a position to do so, I don't want them to not get the comic. So that's kind of where I go with it. But it might make more money if I did. It might make more money. But that can't be the only reason I do things. David says, just sent prints off to the printer. The new t-shirts off to the... Oh, that's wonderful, David. You do so well with the t-shirts. I'm really impressed. Waiting on the lanyard printer now. Technically, the price of those strips was part of buying the paper, but I guess you could say your comic is part of the price of their ISP bill. Yeah, and some of the comics do make me some money. Webtoons and GoComics make me some money. Tapas has never paid me much, if anything. But Webtoons and GoComics do pay me. It's pizza money, but so is getting published in newspapers nowadays. That's not true. Comics like Phoebe the Unicorn and Wallace the Brave, they're doing great. I think they're struggling, of course, because everyone in newspapers is struggling, but they had very strong launches, and they've got very devoted fans, and they use the system of Andrews McMeal, who publishes them, and you can read their work for free on GoComics, the comic strips. They also make print collections. That is part of the plan from the get-go, and that's still my plan too. It's just that I'm mailing out 2 more hard copies, collections of Volume 1 and Volume 2 of The Middle Age today. People read it for free, but a lot of people want that Blu-ray, IMAX, 4K version of it. Some people want it on their shelves, so they want the signature that comes with it, things like that. All right, let's get some robes on this guy, because they do have to be flowing robes. I feel like the face is still a little too... I want it to be... I can't scale both unless I fuse them. No, we'll manually do both. I'm going to shrink the face, and then I'll shrink the hair. But you can see the technique I used, which was I cloned the face, so he has a bald head. And then I cloned that bald head, turned it orange, and then started adding hair. So we got to start with the bald head, Then you clone it, turn it a different color, and then shrink it a little bit. So it's hidden underneath the other face. And then you start building off of that, building clay. And then the parts that poke through the that beige material look like hair. And so that was the... I'm not sure if there's probably an infinitely better way to do it, but that's just what I cooked up. So the orange bit is selected. Let's change the color so it's not. And as I build up that, it pokes through the other part. And so I just build up these prominences, and then I'm going to take the drag tool, and with a small brush, only grabbing a little bit of it, and pull that up. Hopefully to create kind of a crazy mane of hair. But last year was a good year for my sanity and for my business as a cartoonist and as a game creator. There's a distributor now who's distributing my game stuff. Not distributing, excuse me, that's a wrong term. They are making it available at conventions, not comic conventions. Just knee-jerk reactions, put the word comic in front of conventions. So if you're at Gen Con or Origins or any of these other events, people who are there will be able to buy my work, even if I'm not there. So my work will be represented in other places. It's reaching new people. The margins are such that it makes sense. It's similar to comic book distribution margins. Although my margins on my books are better, so even though it's the same percentages even though it might be the same percentages as comic book distribution, it turns out to be a healthier cut. I'll make more from it. And people were talking about the changes. Cave, sorry I didn't meet for a few minutes. I'm on a call. Oh. Cross your fingers. I just sent email to Alton Brown's agent. Fantastic. David, it's just science. Yeah, Cave apparently has some very amazing contributors lined up for his project. It's a cookbook which has I think you can get the first chapter or a sampler over on DriveThruRPG, and it's called Flavor Text Adventures. Do I have that right, Gabe? Let me grab the book. I don't know if the name is going to stay the same from the... Save this version. Cave kindly gave me a preview when we met at Gamehole Con. Flavor Text Adventures. This was a preview, and it's a combination cookbook, adventure book. It's got some stuff that you can use in your D&D games. And at the same time, it's loaded with lovely artwork, funny stories, and then full-on meal prep. The recipe, the difficulty, it's wild. Super cute and a great name. Cave is a player. I've met him. He's kind of got a Will Riker energy. But the convention, I was very happy I did the convention. It was again, a smaller show, a local show, but that's what I always recommend to people who are trying to figure out which conventions to do. Find ones that cost you very little, or they'll bring you out, reduce your overhead, and then learn more about that convention, learn more about the crowd, and then cater to it. And if it's not your kind of crowd, then you know it's not your kind of show. There were some shows I did early on in my calling it career is too highfalutin, but I did the Pittsburgh Comic Con. I would go there, and I was doing my science fiction comic at the time, Astounding Space Thrills, and had very little luck there. They were interested in classic comic books like Golden and Silver Age, and they were interested in Lady Death and the kind of a tattoo art style. Anything with skulls would do very well there. That was just like the aesthetics of the show. So sometimes it's like you're trying to pitch a Lifetime movie, and you're over on Spike TV. Have we made that reference before? Doing. But if anyone wants to get queued up for Nibblemancy, that will be the next one. I had fun putting together a little bit of spot art for that. But there's going to be a lot of cooking and baking stuff in there. I'm hoping I can throw some people Cave's way for his project. What I need to do is make sure I build up enough of a prominence to begin with, so that when I drag out one of these points, that I have something to grab onto. Otherwise it just sort of tears. I'm going to smooth out this section here. It's kind of a mess. Too big a brush. Using a smooth tool to try to correct some of these little weird things that are happening. Exactly. I've been watching on YouTube, just kind of setting in the background. There are like 8-hour videos of just bakeries and people just working in kitchens and assembling dozens of cakes and pastries of all kinds. That is super soothing and inspiring. And since I don't have a lot of, there's actually a pretty good French bakery near me, but anything that's outside of their menu, it inspires me to get baking again. I worked in a lot of kitchens growing up. Waiting tables, as a short order cook, as a dishwasher. And I never really did much baking until the pandemic, and always wanted to. And I started baking then, and I really am into it now. So being able to lean into that's a lot of fun. I also like seeing that the TV show The Bear got so many Emmy Awards. I really love that show, so I'm glad they got it. I was talking with a friend of mine. He's so into, still into Ted Lasso, even though the last season's over. And I was trying to recommend The Bear to him. It's like a more stressful version of that in my mind. What's that notification? But I don't mean it's not like it doesn't have the same tone at all of Ted Lasso, but it's the first one I really like that has a subject matter, characters who are striving to accomplish something. It's kind of an against all odds situation. But damn, I'm just so stressed when I watch that show. It's weird. I'm so stressed, and it's like they have a Christmas episode. It should have a trigger warning, every trigger warning, and I was kind of a wreck after watching it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch it again. So is it the crease tool? Or maybe a little early in the process to be doing this. Tell you what, in cowardly fashion, I'm going to clone the hair and then hide one of them. Oops. And then hide one of them. That way I've got a backup. Those terms already seem like a parody for exactly. There's a spell in D&D which most dungeon masters hate called Silvery Barbs. It was introduced in a Strixhaven book that Wizards put out. It's kind of their Harry Potter-esque magic academy set in the D&D world, and it had a bunch of spells, but one of them was, I think it's a level 1 spell called Silvery Barbs, and it is broken. It's a level 1 spell. You cast it as a reaction, and if a target, if a creature within range rolls to hit, you can, after the die is rolled, use your reaction to hit with Silvery Barbs, which will make it have disadvantage on the roll. They have to roll again and take the lower of the 2 rolls. So it's a thing where the big bad guy crits your compatriot. You hit it with Silvery Barbs, now it has to roll again. It might still hit, but the odds of it critting again, rolling a 20 on a d20, highly unlikely. So it's kind of a get out of jail free card, a little bit. Get out of jail for a level 1 spell slot card. And it has the benefit of, it has a secondary effect. Like that, you'd think that would be enough. That makes him re-roll it. Suddenly disadvantage on the roll. But it will that you then get to give another character before the beginning of your next turn or something like that, or before the beginning of their turn or some such. They get advantage on the next saving throw or attack roll. It's something overpowered to the point where I've never seen it in a campaign. No dungeon master I've ever played with has allowed it. I know they use it in Critical Role. Marisha's warlock Laudna uses it, and every time she uses it, Matt Mercer, the dungeon master, her husband, basically swears under his breath about how broken that spell is. But it's like it's a WotC Hasbro spell. How can you? It is tournament legal. It is Adventure League legal. I want to have a spell called Savory Barbs because of that. Not because of how broken it is, but it's because I think that's a little bit dumb. I feel weird whenever I give into that temptation of that's a good pun. That's a good, it's kind of a good inside baseball. If you're familiar with D&D, anyone who's buying my books has got to be familiar with Dungeons and Dragons and has got to be familiar with Silvery Barbs. So a spell called Savory Barbs will speak to that. But there's tons of... One of the first things I do with these projects is I'm not thinking about them for spells, but I think about them in terms of page headers. Like, for Intoximancy, one of the headers is "Our flagons mean death." It's stuff like that where it's just a whole sheet of things which I can play off of a little bit to hopefully have some clever-ish titles. But I never want these things to become just a collection of dad jokes. So I create those prominences, and then between them I'm putting in some creases to hopefully give those prominences a little more heft. Almost postponed today's stream. I'm in the middle of getting a lot of the backer kit material set up, but it's almost as going to be if that my hand was up to getting the work done. Since it seems good, I thought we'd get this. Plus, I missed you all. Something I haven't done, which was suggested to me, was I go to some local gaming shows, local gaming stores, and when I go to most often to pick up painting supply, like army painter paints, things like that. Maybe offering them some of my books to sell on consignment. I've never had a conversation with them about the fact that I make game stuff. I'm not sure what was selected when I just did that. Probably the main face. The last time I went in there, the person was reading, kind of reading out loud to the owner. They had just gotten their copies of Shadow Dark RPG. David, I don't know. Cave, did you see David's question about if you're a dungeon master? If you dungeon master? I don't know if I missed that answer. Siddharth asks, what would you recommend as the ideal webcomic update right now? I publish my comic in pages, typically several times a week, but I don't think the WEBTOON algorithm favors that anymore. That's interesting. I don't think WEBTOON has an algorithm. You mean in terms of they slightly do, I guess. There is a recommendation engine. When I visit the app and I'm reading a comic, it will say, here are other if you like this comic, readers of the middle age will also like this sort of thing. I see Matthew's Swords comic all the time listed there. That kind of reverse would be amazing because Matthew's got so many more readers than I do. But I get so there's I guess that could be powered by algorithm, or it's powered by their editors. Again, they don't really have a ton of. What's really interesting is you can sort on their website by number of subscribers, or by popularity or ratings. So the number of hearts and likes you get, that can put you in front of, that'll sort you higher in their list. Because again, the list is it's every comic ever. Even if it hasn't been updated in 10 years, it's on the list. It's just at the bottom. But you're competing with everybody. But if you get more likes, and again, with 300 episodes under my belt, it's easier to get to a big number. If I only had 10 episodes, you got to think I'd have 1/30th the amount of likes and subscribers. So I don't know about an ideal schedule, and I don't think they've ever shared anything that says that this is the best algorithm. I think that the best way to post, if you've seen my videos, is that you pick a good time of day. And if that time of day doesn't work, find a different time of day. Because that's more likely, because once you post your comic, you can just look at the all section in WEBTOON's canvas. Is your comic still on the front page? The longer it's on the front page, and the longer it's on the front page of that genre, and if your cover artwork is good, your thumbnail is good and eye-catching, really, really look at it. Really think about if a person was coming at this cold, had no idea what your comic is about, is your thumbnail something they'd want to click? That is huge. If you can make that image a very clickable or very indicative graphic of what's behind it. Like, I do feel like there's a certain amount of, if the thumbnail's good and the person clicks and the interior is not the same quality as that image, or is a lesser quality or not what they're expecting, then they will be disappointed. I feel like there's a lot of reviews of restaurants. When someone says they're in the mood for something, I think genre and style is a lot like flavor or culinary cuisines, usually by region or ethnicity. If someone says they want Italian food, are you in the mood for Italian? That means something. That means probably a red sauce. That probably means pasta. And if they take you to a place that just serves gnocchi, potato balls, that's distinctly Italian. That's Italian food. But it's not what you were expecting, and you're not matching the expectations of what was presented to you. Hey, you like Italian food? And here's gnocchi. I feel like that's a lot of like what we have to deal with as people who are inside these genres. When someone's in the fantasy section, what are they expecting? And if you're in the comedy section, what are people expecting? In romance section, what are people expecting? So genre functions a lot like culinary styles. And I think all the expectations that a reader brings with them, or a consumer brings with them. So that punchy cover image and posting it at a good time of day where lots of people will see it. Some people have suggested, and this was information that came to me after that video, like around 9 p.m. East Coast time, which is roughly when the original series update their episodes. The thinking being that if you post around the time that the originals are updating, that's when everyone with the app is going to get an update that says Lore Olympus was just updated. They're going to fly to the site and check out the latest episode of Lore Olympus. What do they do when they're done with that? You know, will they go into the Canvas section, and at that time are they more likely to see your work? So posting your comic a little bit after, 10 minutes after a big strip like Lore Olympus posts, if your work is anything like Lore Olympus, if your work is anything like whatever the main thing you're trying to attract people from, that would probably be a smart idea. The best thing you can do is, if the more often you post, the more likely you are to find new readers. I don't think that's been true for 30 years. If you post more often, you'll get more. You have more chance to get more readers. On Reddit, I've seen some people talk about how posting frequently doesn't help anymore. I don't know. I feel like that doesn't... that might be a sense, but like in the video I talked about, I would post every week, Monday at 7 p.m., I think it was, or 6 p.m. or something. And if I posted every Monday at 6 p.m., I might get new people. But after a while, I'm going to get fewer and fewer people because everyone who logs in at that time will have seen my work and already judged it. They've already gone, I like it or I don't like it. But there's not going to get new people. It's like showing up, like, but if you pick a different day of the week, then you're more likely to get new people. But if you're trying to get subscribers, that's a different thing. If you're trying to get comments, that's a different thing. If you're trying to get, if it's a goal is Patreon support, a lot of this has to do with what they would call in the marketing world conversion. Like, what are you trying to get out of posting these things? If you're just trying to get out of your system, post whenever you want. If you're trying to get subscribers and you're trying to turn it into income, that's a different metric, and then you got to think differently about that. You know, what does it take on WEBTOONs to get any money? How many views do you have to get in a given month? How many episodes? How many hours? You know, what on YouTube? It takes what, 4,000 hours, 40,000 hours in a 12-month period or something like that, and more than 1,000 subscribers. Those metrics and those numbers always move up. Each time I got closer and closer to unlocking revenue from WEBTOONs, they kept moving it away from me. I got close. Hey, we're changing everything, because as everyone's numbers moved up, they couldn't keep giving everybody who broke that threshold. Otherwise, they would. That's too much money. So they had to keep raising it. Right now, it's just revenue share, and you know, ad money is so little. Getting half of very little is you know, it's pizza money. But you're better off with a Patreon. If you have if you really have an audience, you're better off with a Patreon, because you'll make $5. You'll make $10. And that to me, that's a psychological bit you've got to cross with your friends and family who, I can't go out tonight, I got to work on my comic. It brings in some money. You know what I mean? That's in this weird system. I can't, got to work on my thing. And then getting enough episodes, 30 episodes, so you can do a Kickstarter. A modest, low-goal Kickstarter. and then you deliver something, and if people like it, then you do a follow-up Kickstarter. And, you know, not only will you bring back most of the people who backed you the first time, you'll find a whole new audience. I find Kickstarter and crowdfunding, I mentioned that in the promotion video. That was sort of that was not one. A lot of people suggested postcards. A lot of people suggested different methods. I find that the crowdfunding to be a very successful way of getting the word out. Just because, like Reddit, people go to Kickstarter to discover stuff. And so people might go to Facebook to discover stuff, but Facebook and Twitter don't really encourage that sort of behavior. On Reddit, I've seen people talk about posting. Oh yeah, I hope it helped. I advise. It's weird. I'm loath to call it advice. I'm mostly saying here's what here's what I'm doing and how I would interpret it for myself. I wouldn't suggest anybody use it as a blueprint for what they do. Again, your comic may be very. So what's the name of your comic? And thank you, Anders, for a PayPal order. What did you get, Anders? This looks digital, based on the pricing. Anders ordered, excellent. Death Dealing Digital, Intoximancy Digital, and the pre-order of the Prayer's Handbook. Thank you, Anders. Oops, go the other way. It should be swept back, like it would be going over the ear. Sometimes I just have it appearing like it's a chia pet. I'm going to be using a large collar behind the character to hide any weirdness about the back, but I kind of like the plume of hair so far. I think I have to exaggerate more of it. As I said before, I've got a lot of Kickstarters this year in the works. I'm hoping I still get to do more educational comics projects, but they are always in flux, especially during election years. A lot of textbook companies are at the mercy of local governments, and the local governments are also often at the mercy of the state governments and all the way up the chain. So it's possible that any project that they even start to bid now or start to want to build, you know, by the time it's moving further along, the whole thing might get crushed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But despite all that, the Kickstarters for me have been doing so well, and I'm having so much fun writing these things. And there'll be a third collection of the Middle Age. So if you see me at Baltimore Comic-Con, it will definitely be out by then. I think. The Kickstarter at least have happened by then. Hopefully, at the very least by Christmas, the book will be out. Unless something very unforeseen happens. But I've been really happy with the art in the latest episodes. If you check out episode 298, 299, there's a scene where there's a dragon that's attacking, and the king recognizes the dragon. Because well, won't get into spoiler territory. But the dragon is breathing this, you know, this blast of fire, and the king and our hero are standing behind like a large tree trunk that's on fire. They're kind of out of the range of the blast, and the king has got their hands around the collar of their outfit. And the next panel, you see them looking over, and their hands are like this. It's just sort of the implied animation of one scene to the next. And that second panel, people really like the fire in panel 1. They really like the panel 3 and panel Panel 3's got a tear rolling down the cheek of the dragon. Panel 4 has got the characters running with a wall of fire behind them. But panel 2 is this tight packed scene of the king like this, with the hands pulling the cloak over the face, eyes looking back, fear in their eyes, and behind them, just right over here, is Sir Quimp, and he's looking in the same direction. And I think the composition is so tight, the word balloons fit perfectly, the placement of the heads in terms of how you read the balloons and the shape of the balloons. It doesn't feel like the balloons are an afterthought. The whole thing is this cohesive, tiny little close-up of the two characters. There's one little lighting thing I would tweak. But damn, there's moments like that when you're creating these comics where it's like everything just kind of comes together. And it's dumb. I know it's stuff that people don't care about. No one on Earth should care about it. Like, I've got these little motes of fire that are kind of just peppering the atmosphere, but not covering the word balloons and not affecting the word. So I'm very, very happy with how it comes together. And one of the tricky bits is that the idea is, and I haven't really said it, I've never said this in the comic strip, but at one point or another, this is just a dumb joke I thought of, which was there's a dragon and it's threatening the entire group of heroes. And so the wizard casts a spell, and suddenly they all turn black and white. And the idea is that dragons can't see in black and white. I love the idea because it's dumb. It is so dumb. It's a sentence that you go, oh, they can't see in black and white. That makes, wait, what? It has a wait, what moment, which is my favorite kind of thing to have in these stories. It's a wait, what? And that doesn't make any sense. That you couldn't see, because sometimes people can't see a certain color, or there's a transposition or something like that. But in this case, wait, what? They can't see in black and white. And so the characters are all in this kind of grayscale in the environment. And it's important that almost everything in the environment has this reflected light. So if there's a fire over here in the environment, that everything over here's got a bit of cast of orange to it. Or if it's moonlight, everything's a cast of blue. But these cloaks that they're wearing are magical grayscale. Because I figured it'd be real easy if you can't see in black and white, and you're wearing a garb that's meant to hide you from dragons. If someone just shined a red light in your direction, or if there's a fire over here, you would be lit in golden colors. The idea would be that the magic of the cloak has to rob that area of color. Now, I don't even know why a dragon's perception wouldn't see a shape, a silhouette of a person where light should be. None of it makes sense. It's all dumb. But it makes me so happy. And I spend so much time thinking about this dumb stuff and making sure that no reflected light hits their gray clothing. It's all very stupid. But the motes of fire still move in front of them. They're not part of the clothing. The clothing isn't turned gold by the motes. But the motes are still in a three-dimensional space. They'd still be in front. Anywho, it's a dumb panel. I love it. Siddharth says, I can't say unfortunately. My writer wants to keep things a little private as we want to test the WEBTOON algorithm without doing any promotion or guaranteed subs. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I hope when you can say that you come back and point us all there. You have at least one subscriber already. doing. Well, thanks everyone for being here and listening to me ramble. One of the things I wanted to do when I started the Middle Age, again, I thought this was sort of my last ditch effort at having a comic anybody. It was going to be, you know, I'm at some point, you just know you've got fewer days ahead of you than you have behind you, and I was crossing that point when I was doing creating the Middle Age like 7 years ago. I'm like, if this is the last project I do, what's it going to be? What am I going to do with it? And I knew that might be the advice for the next video. It might be about exit strategy. Because part of it was absolutely that the Middle Age could have ended after 50 episodes. I started the project knowing I could end it. Knowing that it could be self-contained. And if I were to do something afterwards, I would always have this 50 pages of the Middle Age. So let's say I do it. It goes up there. Part of the creation of it was inspired by a question like from a newspaper syndicate, the GoComics site, saying, hey, if you ever have an idea, do something. It got me thinking about newspaper comics again. I just worked on the Richard Thompson book, who's an amazing newspaper cartoonist, comic strip cartoonist. I'm like, yeah, I should do something. I really should do something. I grew up loving comics. My grandmother would cut out the newspaper comics and give me collections every year. She would paste into composition notebooks, you know, the kinds that have this kind of cover. She would paste into them newspaper comics that she would clip out of Newsday or the Daily News on Long Island. These books were thick because it had more paper than the spine was built to handle, because it had so much newsprint glued inside. And it was like, when I was a kid, the Hulk comic strip was in there, so I was getting superhero comics, and Spider-Man comic strip was in there, and it was each comic strip had its own book. These books have long since been destroyed. But those were the comics I read. And the idea of doing a comic strip was just like, yeah, of course, it speaks to me. But I knew that if I had a plan to get out of it, like after 50 episodes, the thing could wrap up. Maybe it's just a bunch of... If you've read The Middle Age, Sir Quimp, it's a story about a knight who's in love with a dragon and has a magic sword that hates him. And if it was just this guy walking around with a sword, and the sword's just busting on him for 50 episodes, that would have been fine. I could have told a bunch of dumb jokes, and it would have been a really silly book, and I could move on to something else. But I had 50 episodes for it to catch. I'm going to give myself 50 episodes. And if before those 50 episodes, if I did one a week, let's say a year, 52 episodes, if within a year, if it doesn't catch on, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll call it a day. And then I got an Eisner nomination, and then I got 30 or 40 supporters on Patreon. And then the Eisner nomination unlocked a lot of other things. So what's this is being worked on? Telemon, how are you? Just got back from taking the wife to work. Good man. This is a creature for the Meta Domain. This is a corrupted Meta Domain Cleric. This is a character. If the Meta Domain is a cleric who doesn't believe, who believes this all might be a game, this is someone who wants to reset it all. This is someone who wants to end the game. Part of this came out of the notion of like, what if characters took it in that direction? But also, someone suggested, when doing Intoximancy, what if this became like an evil potioneer or something like that? And it's absolutely within the rules that for the Intoximancer. They're good at making potions. They get a bonus to potion effects. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, it takes an action to drink a potion. So the time it takes other people's to swing a sword or cast a spell, if you have a potion on your person, you could say, okay, I'm going to hide behind a tree with my movement, and I'm going to swig my potion. And if you have a bonus action, you can do something else or something like Critical Role feels like you've basically wasted your turn. They've turned it into a bonus action in their house rules. I built that into the Intoximancer subclass. It's a bonus action to drink a potion if you're Intoximancer. But if you take a full action to drink it, you basically augment it in some way. Your magic enhances the potion and you drink it, and if it has a duration, the duration lasts twice as long. And if it's a healing potion, it heals you for a little bit extra. Healing potions are probably the most common potion in the game. I like the nihilist view. Yeah, exactly. That's part of what the the opening letter in the middle, in Meta Domain is. It's a thing where, if it's all a game, does anything matter? And the opening bit is kind of saying, yes, it does. And here's why. And I think that's key to the subclass. We talked about the balance of role-playing games, RPGs. Role-playing is the acting, the improv, the character creation, getting in the headspace and all that stuff. And the game part is kind of like, here are the rules, here's the dice, what are the stats and your abilities and all that stuff, and how do they add up to mechanize the character that you are. And so it's a balance of, to me, RP and G. Intoximancy's more RP than G, because there's a lot of, you just want to play a character who's a little drunk, who's gonna be like, I love you guys so much, I'm gonna cast a spell now. And then you've got the death dealing side, which is absolutely more like, it's crunchier. It's got it's all about that fighting and the mechanism of it, and any character you bring to it's kind of on you. Meta Domain is so RP. It's so heavy that way. The characters got powers, don't get me wrong. At level 8, a Meta Domain Cleric learns their player's name and can invoke it to upcast a spell. So whenever you say, by the silvery strands of Steve, and you slam somebody with something, with your spiritual weapon, suddenly it's not cast at the standard level 2, it's cast at level 3. And so it does extra damage. So it's basically a free upcast based on that ability to invoke your player's name. There's also a page in the book that says your player doesn't have to be your player, because it's meta, so why not just go nuts? Maybe you're not playing you, maybe you're playing Eddie Munson from Stranger Things playing your cleric. So how messed up you want to get and how weird you want to get is up to you. This character class begs for weirdness. That was some rambling. That was some. I've clearly put in my 10,000 hours in rambling. Siddhartha asks, "What's your favorite character from the Middle Age?" Sir Quimp. Sir Quimp. He's so well-meaning. He's so in over his head. The sword is a jerk. That's a great place to let me vent, but and let my inner New Yorker, my inner Long Islander, come out. But damn, Sir Quimp he's my boy. He is I feel his pain, and I love the way he loves his kids. I love the way he loves Phosphene, even if it's unrequited, even if it's, well, no spoilers. Yeah, characters mean the world to me. But they're all like, the Waddlebottom's just ridiculous. Melvin is a hoot. Phosphene is awesome. Yeah, I don't know about a favorite. Yeah, I would say Sir Quimp for sure. I mean, he's been in every episode. That was one of the trickiest bits about telling the story of my feeling was, and I talked about this in the past, if you're doing a comic strip, especially an ongoing comic strip, and every episode is somebody's first, that I had to make sure Sir Quimp was in every episode. I had to know that the episode you see, if you see any episode of the Middle Age, you get a sense of what this story is about. You get a sense of who this story is about. And if Sir Quimp's there, odds are the sword's there as well. Maledicta's there as well. So the idea that no matter where you come in, you see Sir Quimp. He's only not appeared in one episode. And even that was like, I was, I'm like, okay, I've done this for 260 episodes. I think I can have one episode without him in it. And since then, I might have gone back and added one or two. Like sometimes occasionally it's a whole flashback, but there's still one panel where Sir Quimp is asking a question. Hey, wait, what happened at that time? And then the person says, I'll tell you. And then it's 3 panels of flashback. But still Sir Quimp is some sort of engine to invoking, to asking the question. He's propelling the story, even if he's not the start of it. And that's the whole reason why the character, when they get knocked unconscious, when Sir Quimp gets knocked unconscious, the sword takes over. And that wasn't because I thought, oh, wouldn't it be funny if when he gets knocked out, the sword takes over. It was more like, I have to have him in the scene, but reveal to the audience things that Sir Quimp can't know. So he has to be unconscious. So there's a couple ways I could have done that. I could have had something happen in the foreground, and he could have been way in the background and something happened. But it was important that he was unconscious so that you could learn things, like specifically when Maledicta is talking to Kevin the illegible. When they have that conversation, some of those initial conversations, some of the later conversations, Quimp has to be out. And so he's just this unconscious vessel as the sword is just slashing and slashing. Cave responded, David, I'm just going to talk with him. I was hoping to find a GM for a small group with for my friend and I. We haven't played in ages. I have the same thought. I think we might be able to rope Steve Sketches into DMing. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Cave says, that's why we sort of have Heinrich. Is it Heimlich? It's a different... That's only if the flavor text adventure goes horribly, horribly wrong do you need Heimlich. We have Heinrich in flavor text as a counter for scenes where Alton is alone and has no other characters there. That's another... that's sort of why we have... yeah, no other character... That was absolutely a part of it, too. Oh god, Steve Conley's terrible. Steve Conley's the worst. Ugh. Yeah, when my college comic strip was a thing called Anomaly. It was about a character who falls unconscious and comes back. He's in some sort of Buck Rogers-like state of suspended animation, and it comes back in the future, and it's kind of this sci-fi dystopian anthropomorphic future. The story never got very far. I think I graduated before I ever finished the story. It was but he had this sentient robot that kind of sat on his shoulder like a parrot, and they could communicate. And the key there was always that, how do you get out exposition? How can you have dialogue even when the character's alone? And that was a part of the joke with the Middle Age too. The only reason why we have a talking sword, not the part about just him being unconscious, him being a talking sword from the beginning, like from episode 1, was the idea that I only had to draw one character and they could have a conversation. It was like, I needed, thinking about newspaper comic strips and how small they have to be and how large the text has to be, I needed to make room for the dumb jokes. So it had to be Sir Quimp with a sword, and the two of them could just riff. Steve Sketches worries me. Does Steve Conley DM? Steve Conley has DM'd. Steve Conley's not good at it, though. He's terrible. He lacks skills. David, exactly right. I do occasionally Dungeon Master. I would be worried about. All the other things that distract me in my life. That so many projects I have all the time. The act of dungeon mastering seems to be requires such solid prep. I know I watch Sly First's videos, Mike Shea's videos about being the lazy DM, and I admire it that he can just kind of wing it. but I don't think I could. I'm too much of a control freak. Steve Sketches is a megalomaniacal DM, I think. You think, is that means like the old school style, David? Like someone who is comfortable killing the characters right and left? Siddharth, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Out to kill players. Gotcha, Dave. That's old school. That is adversarial. In Meta Domain, I kind of hint at the adversary. That that the players, the person who controls you, that there's something against them. That there's an adversarial force. That not all the things that befall you are the responsibility of this omniscient player who controls you and cares for you, but there's an adversary. I played with him and he wasn't like that at all. Huh. That's nice. All right, let's get some robes on this guy. I feel like that hair is mad enough, and I don't think it's going to be quite so. What was the name of that character? Freakazoid. I will say the costume I saw maybe more than any other at the Central Florida Comic-Con was Luffy from One Piece. I think I saw more of that character than anybody else. A lot of straw hats. So we talked about this before, about the drapery, that I created this basic shape as the drapery for everything. I'm gonna have to recreate this from scratch now that I've moved the figure around. So I'm gonna start with the torso and the legs. So to do this, I'm going to use the selection tool, which is sort of a lasso tool, to try to connect a few pieces here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Then I'm going to clone those pieces, join them, and solo, just so we can see, make sure I got enough of the pieces. I think we did. Good, good, good. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to fuse these pieces together, and then we can draw on it. We can start molding it. The idea is that the fabric we're going to build is going to be extruded from this piece. So the idea is you have a form and the clothing is going to be laying on top of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink the figure down a little bit, again, just like we did with the hair. I'm going to shrink that down, and then when we extrude it, it'll still have some overlapping with the main figure itself, which will, you know, create a connection, make sure it prints better, make sure everything about it's more solid. Shane, how the heck are you? When you get when someone's looking for a dungeon master, do you appear, Shane? I'm just going to run the smooth tool over this, and then I will adjust the mold so that it flows. So when we create the drapery, it will drape. I'm still just running the smooth tool over this thing. That hand is ridiculously large. I think I like it with the foreshortening, but I don't think it would work in a mini as a mini. And this hand, I think I just scratched that in. It's a bit wonky. At least I'd want the exterior of it to look right, even if the interior doesn't, because where it crosses into and overlaps with a book, I'm going to increase the surface connection there so it prints better, even if it as a design, if it's a little, even if anatomically it's a bit goofy. I'm just going to smush that in. But I kind of want that sharp angle of the wrist so that you have this kind of, how do I show that? When you have the sharp angle and that kind of little convex, is that right? Concave? Shape of the hand that probably doesn't really exist in nature, but looks right. Trick might be to inflate the book and not the arm. The weird part too is that a person probably wouldn't hold the book that way. They would probably hold the I'd probably cradle the spine in their hand and not the loose pages. It's just more clearly a book if I do it this way. Oh well, I'll live with it. I may change it at the end. Shane is always with us. How am I going to do this? Let's try this. We will use the selection mask tool and front facing vertex only, and we will select the butt. That's right, it's that kind of channel. Alright, so those elements won't move, and that way I can drag everything else. And we can remesh. A smaller brush here. Now we can clear the selection. Just the idea that you still have the form of the back, and you could see the form of the figure through the outfit, but I didn't want to lose all that gesture. The idea is we'll drape it down further than we need to, and then we'll cut off the bottom. worked out pretty well. Now at some point I'm going to probably make the robe translucent so that I can sculpt around the knees. I want to hint at that knee underneath the robe. I think that'd be a big deal. This is where having a little bit of that, we're going to show a little leg, as it were. Bottom there is a little weird. I gotta fix that. Gotta remesh this, and use the smooth tool in here to kind of fill out that area. I like the indentation, but it's a little too much. Shane, I do like DMing, especially if we're playing 5th edition, and especially if we're playing 5e online. I tend to get bored otherwise. David, good to see you. Enjoy dinner. If I had to pick a gripe, it would be I didn't sleep well last night. So I'm sorry. That sucks. You prefer 5e and online? But if 5e and online are the only way to play, I would much prefer to DM than play. Oh, that's interesting. Cave says, personally, I'd rather avoid 5e. The most bored I was at TTRPG was playing 5e online. How are you playing online? Like, I play 5e through Zoom, and we sometimes use a VTT just to show where we are on the map. The boring part of that is when Foundry doesn't behave and the Dungeon Master has to basically get angry at the machine for 20 minutes. I'd roll 20. Word is there's the system Owlbear Rodeo people say good things about, and all the people who were not Hasbro's biggest fans, like the Roll for Combat guys, they are all, and Professional Dungeon Master, they all got to play Hasbro's VTT at PAX, I want to say, and they all loved it. So they're saying that Hasbro's VTT is solid, and that it was... Now, this isn't the same as their subscription system, as far as I understand it. That's just a VTT. They were saying it is basically simple like Owlbear Rodeo, where it's just it's a map, you put tokens on it, you can measure distances. I'm not even sure there's line of sight controls. I think like line of sight controls are kind of dumb. You could just use the honor system. You can't see that guy from here. But I do understand, I do appreciate the idea that you honestly don't know there are 3 giants behind that wall until you turn the corner. There's a fun quality to that. I get that. Shane says, Cave says I've used Zoom, Discord, Roll20. Shane says 5e is not very captivating to me in general, and online isn't. Telemont says, I personally can't stand Roll20 after having started with Foundry. Roll20 is so outdated and a pain to work with. Shane, Online 5e is among my least favorite. If the party isn't really deep into it, I would honestly rather not play at all. Huh. I didn't know the system mattered all that much. I do get things like some people hate bonus actions and reactions and all that stuff. But I didn't know there was much beyond that that people had issue with. Again, I'm an outsider kind of. I mean, I played the red box and blue box editions of D&D. I played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then I went away for 25 years. Frozen in a block of ice. And I came back and was playing 5th edition, and I felt I understood it completely. Like, it to me, it felt like as someone who'd been away, it seemed like perfectly designed for those of us who were going to come back. But I also think a good DM can make any system work. I mean, unless there's gaping holes in it. Or if the system's just weird, like Blades in the Dark, that's a weird system. The whole idea that, when you're going to do a heist, you don't plan what you bring with you. It's basically just an exercise in improvisation. That is so role-playing heavy that you're kind of counting on people like, oh, I brought a 2x4 with me to prop open the window. The idea is you're cutting out all that prep time before the heist and then just improvising along the way. It's a cool idea, but I think it's asking a lot, and it's such a gear shift from 5e. Shane says the power creep of 5e means that your character is pretty much only challenged from about level 1 to level 6-ish. Most DMs are not comfortable enough or nuanced enough to take up the existing material and scale it up, but even then, if you're level 10 or 12, you pretty much can't die. I have a thought about that, Shane. I feel like my Dungeon Master shares, and I've heard that complaint before. It's a absolutely legitimate complaint. I feel as though I look at Star Wars as a D&D campaign, and that the characters never really feel in jeopardy, but everybody else is. The planet Alderaan is. The princess might be. Han Solo might be. All these characters are in jeopardy, and it's not necessarily about how close you come to death, but because there's clearly a way to threaten players is by throwing too many monsters at them. Or you just say that you see it's a giant monster, there's 2 giant monsters and they both take haste potions. Good luck. You know what I mean? It's like, because of the action economy and all that, I feel like there is a level of massive threat that you can throw at people, but at the same time you make them you put the villagers in risk. They've captured 3 halfling children, and you better do this right, otherwise they're dead. You might be a superhero, but again, that's like, if it's because it really at the end it's a superhero role-playing game. But you're absolutely right. So Shane, you might like this. These are magic items that I'm gonna have. I've already shown one over on my Patreon. It's free. It's not paywalled at all. You can check it out. It's the Protector's Bulwark. These are magic items which have a basic ability, which is low, and when you carry it around with you, you wear it, whatever it is, depending on the item, it's got a general buff of some kind. Once you activate it, to activate it, it consumes your 3 death saves. It's powered by your life force. So the shield has this massive ability, but it takes your death saves away. It takes your security blanket away. It takes your safety net away. that raises the stakes a lot, because a lot of people, I think, play the game going, okay, even if I die, even if I lose all my hit points, my fellow players have 3 rounds to feed me a health potion, because they know the dungeon master isn't going to do the following, which is with a first attack, the monster hits you, knocks you down, you're out of hit points. With its second attack, it curb stomps you and takes away 2 of your death saves. Almost always, the dungeon master, being a friend, and being a colleague, and a fellow player at the table, the monster will turn its attention to the other characters once it's killed you. Like the monsters don't understand the rules of the game. So the characters are playing a meta game, and the monsters are doing genuine, immersive role playing. The genuine monsters are like, oh, I've killed him, I can move on. They never curb stomp. It's so that breeds that adds to a sense of invulnerability. But the idea that the characters have to be hanging by a thread in order for there to be jeopardy, I feel like that puts too much stress on the dungeon master. KV, the absence of threat is a problem, but my biggest problem with 5e is the almost total lack of customization in characters. They took out feats, mostly, and customizable skills, and just gave PCs a couple of paths to choose from at level 3. And solve the rest of it by giving almost every class spells, so you feel like you have a choice. I see what you're saying. Whereas before, there was a unique flavor to each class, and so like with is that 4th edition Cave, where you really had your own unique things. Yeah, the last campaign I played, a 2-year campaign, the Dungeon Master, a third. The Dungeon Master had he wanted to do a low magic campaign. By the time we hit level 10, my bard character was a pretty solid bard, but also a dragon at that point. He started off as a half-elf, but then he was a dragon. The fighter had a third arm, a magical third arm, and was also an eldritch knight, and also essentially a paladin warlock. The rogue was an arcane trickster who had spells and put levels into what am I drawing? The machinist character, the engineer type, the artificer, was an artificer rogue who had the mounted feat and was a halfling and had a if you choose Steel Defender, that can be a medium creature, and if you're a halfling, you can ride a medium creature. So they had the mounted feat, so they basically had a bear that they could ride around, and we were so overpowered. The Dungeon Master was beating his head against a wall, trying to figure out ways to thwart us. And it's such a pain in the ass, because it's a pain in the ass for the Dungeon Master, it's a pain in the ass for the players, because they say that you want to shoot arrows at monks. That's kind of the example, is that monks can catch arrows out of the air. But at some point, the Dungeon Master gets frustrated, and everyone goes, oh, it's a monk, don't fire your arrows. And so here's this ability monks have that's super cool that they don't get to use because everyone's smarter than that. And so the characters never get to use all their cool abilities. Whatever your cool ability is, you want to use it, and the Dungeon Master doesn't want you to use it because it's overpowered. So you never get to do the fun stuff. The stuff you've geared your character to do. You've talked with the Dungeon Master. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this spell and this spell and this spell, and I think it's really going to combo well. And the Dungeon Master, their prerogative, apparently, in some cases, is to never let you do that. I've constructed an I win button. Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. You're never going to get to use it. Talmud says, I specifically check with my players beforehand to see if they want something combat focused or more narrative. Makes it a lot easier. Smart. Cave. And not just for each class, but each character was unique in numbers and as well as personality background. Now it's mostly the RP elements that distinguish one PC from another and same class and level. Shane says, right. Most DMs aren't going to want to try to push the existing material up to expand that challenge, or they are maybe not comfortable or might feel confident in their skills to create things on the fly. It's not the fault of DMs. Yeah, Shane, absolutely. It's really interesting. The amount that people get to... It's really interesting how challenging it is to balance the game and at the same time give players enough to do. Someone said the other day it takes 5 minutes for a 4-hour walk and it takes 4 hours for a 5-minute fight. That there's a weirdness to the whole system. My dungeon master hates combat. But it feels like every session has to have if there's not combat in the session, sometimes people can feel like, I never got a chance to use many of my cool abilities. Then you've got the people who are all they care about is when they're going to level up next. They always have their eye on the next level for the next power that they'll unlock, not knowing that every time they unlock a power that it makes the game harder and weirder. They just want to be more special. It's super tough. I don't know how any system can ever defeat that idea. I was always kind of happy with it, almost always. Once certain abilities are locked behind levels, and they have to be, because if someone's going to multi-class, you don't want someone to just, I'm going to spend 1 point and I'll be a cleric for 1 level and suddenly unlock all these abilities. You want to push it back a little bit. But once my characters unlock those abilities, I love level 5. I could play level 5 forever. When I'm designing my subclasses, like wizards have a level 17 ability, so do clerics. They might as well get an I win button, because most players are never going to see it. A campaign will wrap up by level 13. So someone at one point said the Death Dealer's ability at level is too powerful. I'm like, okay. The wizard just got Wish. Why don't you let the rogue have this? Shane, 5e is geared toward combat, which is why I call it dice rolling. That's pretty good. It's geared toward combat, but doesn't really make combat very interesting. Yeah, I think that if there's more... I was really happy with death dealing, in that the rogue ability is called Lucky Streak, that if any of the other players crit, you can use your reaction to attack the same target if the target's still alive, otherwise you can pick another target. Because if they crit and they just crush the character, the rogue can attack somebody else. But the idea is that rogue is paying attention the player of that rogue is paying attention to everybody else at the table. If they crit, they get to do something cool. And to me, that keeps that player engaged. It also makes them hold back on the reaction. Maybe they'll get lucky. Maybe they won't use that other thing, that opportunity attack, if they can hold off for something better. I like that. I thought that was a good idea. The idea that what somebody else does can trigger. There aren't a lot of those, but I can imagine there being stuff like, if a fellow player casts a spell, you can use your reaction to do the following. There's a really cool ability in Meta Domain. I think it's cool. I hope folks like it. Do I have the document here? Where are you? The Pages document. It's in my Pages. What's it called? It's a spell. How would you like to do that? Taking inspiration from the line from Critical Role. How would you like to do that? As a bonus action, you as your Meta Domain Cleric. This is not the exact language. This is just from my notes here. Bonus action. You target an ally. If they vividly and creatively describe the attack while they do it, the attack does an extra 1d8 holy damage. I love that. I love that amplifying effect of your teammate and forcing them to tell a story. It feels like a good meta domain thing. Place your bets. Will Steve be able to work Intoximancy into this rant as well, and thereby shill all 3 products in the span of 2 minutes? Cave, it's funny that you mentioned Intoximancy. This whole channel is just an infomercial. This is the slap chop of of streams. What was the name of the infomercial device on Arrested Development? the one that burned everybody. And then he goes into Nibble. And just right, nibblemancy.com. "70 lovely symmetrical people have already signed up to be notified when that campaign goes live. Don't miss out." Save. Please, Steve, my poor wallet. Tales of the Valiant is hurting me enough already. Okay, so are you getting their Dungeon Master's guide? Their Game Master's whatever who? And I love that the system automatically put up my Patreon as well. Thank you, system. They were saying that you don't really need that to play the game. It's really just a absolute bonus for Dungeon Masters. I'm going to use a drag tool here and extend this down to the ground, and then we're going to trim off the bottom. This trim tool brought to you by Intoximancy. Intoximancy, it's what's for dinner. So, because we can't have a stream without talking about AI, I had a great conversation with, or an enlightening conversation with a fellow creator who's a writer, and was basically the entire conversation was trying to find was asking me to help them find a moral rationale for using AI. I was like, I apologized to the guy right out of the gate. I said, okay, you got your work cut out for you here. Because apparently they found it, and they found that system, they wanted to use it, and immediately the artist they work with said, if you use this, I'll never work with you again. And he was like, I guess I'm not using it. So kudos to that artist. Oops. And then they were trying to say to me, because I'm empathetic to where they're coming from. I don't agree, I don't see there any reasonable, rational, moral way of using it. But boy, was he trying. But what if I use only a little? Of course, I'm getting it. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. And yeah, Tales of the Valiant looks like it's going to be great. I dig their artwork. It's supporting a good cause. But to me, it's like the Matt Colville game. I thought it looked awesome. I would love to support it. It was just so expensive. Yeah, I feel bad that my stuff costs anything. But then I'm thinking about that. Every once in a while, I have my eye on food. I think that'd be nice. I keep thinking, yeah, a sandwich would be pretty good. And so I end up charging for things. I know what you're thinking. Here I am in stately Conley manner. My servants try to keep it down while I'm working. I appreciate that. I'm going to use a smooth tool. Actually, let me save, and I'm going to remesh this to reinforce it a little bit. So as I smooth this, hopefully it's not going to fall apart too badly. I want to smooth the fabric out, and this fabric's going to get all torn up. But I want it to feel like it has a flow to it, and then once that flow is there, then I can slice it and dice it, and hopefully there's enough of a motion to it, enough of kind of a, I don't know, enough movement in it that no matter how much I distress it, that it will maintain some of that energy. I was going to have the character's feet planted firmly, but then I thought just a little bit of pivot in the hips. Much as like you'd see in Intoximancy, available at intoximancy.com. Ask for the Cave Geek Art discount, which is none. Yeah, Shane, that's true. That's assuming it's got the same quality. Yeah. Whoa, I missed that. I missed out some of that Telemot. I'm waiting to get the new monster game, Pap World, till the whole possible AI and plagiarism thing with them is worked out. Huh, I don't know anything about that. If there's a link for that you want to put over in the Discord, Telemot, I'd love to find out more about that. The TOV player and monster books are both almost 400 pages, so price is reasonable to me. Right. Assuming it's got the same qualities, but I am assuming it does. Pal World. Huh, yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'm going to carve some of this off some more here. First of all, I have to see through the object and cut that off. How are we doing on time? Oh, almost at 7 o'clock. I didn't take a break at all. You all kept me glued to my seat. I appreciate it. So I will have to make real boots because the feet will be showing through the underneath the the robes. But after this, I'll be getting back to working on the backer kit system. The surveys for Meta Domain will go out this week. If you missed out on the campaign, there will be a way to order from my website, and you can already order the PDF from my website if you go to steveconley.com. But I'm not having a pre-order store over on BackerKit unless they've fixed some problems. I'm gonna, as I build a BackerKit store, if they fixed some stuff. The main problem I had was I collect my shipping within Kickstarter because I think that's the right thing to do. I don't like the idea of, pledge now. When it comes time to ship, then we'll tell you what the shipping costs are. I feel like that's not cool. I think that part is really good for raising more money, because if a person's going to be adding their shipping costs in, then they've got their credit cards out, they might as well just add all sorts of add-ons. So I understand the commercial reason to do it. It still feels a little bit wrong. I'd much rather let people know the shipping costs up front. But I still like BackerKit for the fulfillment part of it, because their organizational system behind the scenes is so much better than what Kickstarter currently has. You can sort things. It's easy to mark things as fulfilled, not fulfilled. It's so nice. It's so easy they've really got that part down, that dashboard, and as a creator. So I'm still using them, but so I'm also giving people the opportunity to add on, because that's another great part of BackerKit. So you can add to your pledge if you want, especially for stuff like the Grognard Mini, because that was unlocked in the campaign, and not everybody wants to go into Kickstarter and edit their pledge. That's a whole thing. But I want to show this again while I can. I printed this out and had this at the Central Florida Comic-Con. This is a 3x size version of the Grognard. Printed it here on my Bamboo Lab printer. So this is 3 up. It's printed in pieces because I think this would fit within the printing space of the X1 Carbon printer, but the way I design these minis is not necessarily conducive to printing as a single piece. There's things like this knee. Of course, I spray painted everything black. It's hard to see. Let me get you another one. This is the smaller size. Oh, this one was actually printed as a single piece, I think. There is a place that where the knee almost touches the ground. So, like, how is that knee going to be supported? You have to have filament supports in there to keep the knee from falling apart. And the whole thing, I designed it to look cool. I didn't design it to be printed. And I designed this before I got a 3D printer, where when I look at this now, I go, what was I thinking? So I've learned a lot in the month and a half since I've gotten a 3D printer. But anywho, the Grognard Mini is something I'm excited for people to get. But you can get the STL. If you want to print a 3 up, you can. I don't know how many potions of growth you'd have to take to have that effect. But that thing was, it was great to have that at the convention. It was very eye-catching. It brought some people over. It also edited clearly between the light-up D12 I have and that guy, it says from a distance Dungeons & Dragons, which is good. It brought some people over. And my 5e books were a hit. Absolutely. Oh, I'm not going to trim this part yet. I'm going to create the flowing torn bits, and then we'll worry about that bit of drapery later. At first I thought maybe I'd just keep all this underneath it. Maybe I will. I think I'm going to keep a really solid, this element underneath the figure, because I think it will make the whole thing print better. I do want to change one thing. I want to do solo. And we're going to use the selection mask tool and the rectangle. Oh, we have front-facing vertex only, don't we? That means only the side facing the camera was selected, right? See, I could tell from where it was selecting the object that it wasn't working the way I thought it was going to. So I will deselect, I will clear the selection, I will turn off front-facing vertex, and now when I select it, you should see that the gizmo tool only appears at the bottom. Yeah, it's down there. Now when I move that, that will move only the part that's not selected. So I was able to select everything else and then drag everything else down so that hopefully I can trim that area off and it'll be nice and smooth and fused with the ground when that cylinder, not cylinder, but, well, it started as a cylinder, that base disc. All right, clear. We'll rename this dress form. That's technically what it kind of is. How we doing? I shared a video going over the possible issues. Game looks great, but not sure if I want to give them any money just yet. Because it is because they used AI for it. That's interesting. I'll look into it. I'm curious as to how they used it. I feel bad for the people who've used it. I feel bad for people who've used it innocently. If they haven't used it innocently, then my big problem with it is if they don't want to support creators, I don't want to support them. I think that's pretty much as succinct as I can make it. Now I'm going to expand this, so I'm going to move the pivot point up a bit, like to the selection line. And then when I scale it up, it should scale it up from that point, which might give a nicer, cleaner look. So it does scale it there, but I'm going to try to smooth that out and fix it if I can. The only way to have a gradated selection seems to be using the selection brush tool. Let's try that. Let's do that. I'm going to use the selection mask, sorry, the mask tool. Unmask. Less intensity. So what this is going to do is it's going to unmask. If I use this at full intensity and drew it here, we're unmasking that selection. So what I'm doing is I'm going to reduce the intensity of that, and I'm going to unmask around the edges here. That means we're going to basically soften the selection. So hopefully it will gradate a bit. So that's still a fairly harsh line. So I'm going to go back with the selection tool and a bigger brush and bring it all the way down. Not all the way down, but quite a bit further down. So now, selection mask, bigger brush, lower intensity. And this will darken the figure. What I'm trying to do is make it so that that hard line doesn't seem to be there anymore. Because that hard line, when I expand it, that's where that's where it will create a shelf. I don't want that to happen. Just brush down the figure a little bit here too. Okay, now when we scale it, I move the pivot point up. Now there's no hard line. You can see a little bit of it there, right? That must be like the 50% mark, where you go from being 50% more selected versus greater than 50% selected and less than 50% selected. So I'm using the smooth tool to even out that part, because if we were to extract a shell from that piece, it would absolutely create a line. because you're basically exaggerating all that. At some point, I had selected his butt, and so I'm going to fix that right there. The main thing is I just want to hint at the figure under the robes. So that's why I had to select make sure that when we pull the drapery down over the rear end, that it doesn't, so we don't lose that sense of shoulders and hip and waist. It's not clear that they did use AI, but they had for another game. There's also the possible plagiarism as well. Oof. Okay. Is this a console game, or is this a TTRPG or board game? Another kind of game? An app game? A freemium? A freemium battle pass? Extravaganza? Something that Stephanie Sterling would tear to shreds in the next episode? All right, it is 7 o'clock on the nose. Well, that was a marathon. A half marathon. At the speed I run, that was a 2K. That's what that was. Let's see who we can rate. Thank you all for being here. If you're watching this on the YouTube, thank you. I really appreciate you. This gray hair and this pompadour of mine. When I was at the airport leaving Madison for Gamehole Con, someone at the airport, a guy says, "Oh, I thought you were George Lucas." I gotta get a haircut. A $30 console PC game. I really appreciate you being here. Cave, we'll be in touch. I liked your notes. I've got my thinking cap on. When Shane, when you're ready to dungeon master, I'll bring my level 5 Intoximancer. Is there anyone on we can raid? We go check out the Twitches. But if you're on YouTube, the raid part you're not gonna understand. What happens is we on Twitch, all of us are gonna go and check out somebody else's Twitch stream. So if you're on the YouTubes, I really appreciate you being here. If you haven't checked out the Middle Age, please do. A lot of the folks who watch me over on the YouTube, but they are coming from the comics side of things. The latest episode of the Middle Age, number 299, is out and is available for free over on WEBTOONs, Tapas, GoComics, my own website, and on Patreon. I don't believe I'm paywalling much on Patreon anymore. But they're like, well, why put it on Patreon? Mostly because Patreon makes it easy to become a supporter. That's why. Steve Sketches is on. I've heard good things about him. I hear he's a good dungeon master. I have from a fairly reliable source. A fairly reliable source. But I'm gonna get back to work on setting up backer kit. So if you're a backer of Meta Domain, I'm hoping that backer kit will. They kick the tires. They go through and they double check everything. They automatically will send me a note about a few choices I always make every single time, and make sure, hey, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yes, I do. But as soon as they give me approval, we will get our surveys out. And if you missed the Meta Domain, I'm hoping to have that pre-order store available. But if you want to pre-order the PDFs or either of the books, those are available on my website already at steveconnelly.com/shop. Steve Sketches is, yeah, let's rate Steve Sketches. He's a lovely person. Can I do that? I have to go through the trouble of muting myself. And I can spell. All right, folks. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely evening. I will see you on Thursday.